Welcome, brave listener. We're honored you've joined us. As shadows thicken, these tales are woven to haunt long after silence falls. Listen closely. Every rustle, every whisper here is deliberate. The darkness around you isn't empty. It's alive. Let the chill begin. And pray it doesn't follow you home. Story 1. The soil of Blackfield always tasted like rot. Clara remembered that first, not the crooked steeple of St. Bridget's, nor the way the birch trees bent away from the old quarry like penitents avoiding a leper, but the cloying dampness that clung to the back of her throat as the greyhound wheezed to a stop. 7 years since she'd smelled that particular decay, 7 years since her mother's coffin sank into that greedy earth. And yet her body reacted as if she'd never left. Her fingers found the medallion under her sweater, the one non-Abayan pressed into her palm the night before child services took her away. Keep it on. The old woman had rasped, breath reeking of turnip stew and impending death, even in the bath. You shouldn't have come back. The voice startled her. Jed Harper leaned against the warped boards of the bus depot. Skin the grayish white of mushrooms growing under a rotten log. His overalls hung loose where muscle used to be. Clara noticed he kept his left hand tucked behind his back. Everyone over 40 in Blackfield did that now, she realized. Same way everyone over 60 walked with a pronounced limp. Dad's dying, she said, hefting her duffel. The medallion burned between her breasts. Where else would I go? Jed's right eye twitched. Behind him, Main Street, unfolded like a corpse mid-autopsy cracked pavement, oozing black weeds. The hardware store's windows cataracted with dust. A single plastic bag caught in the churchyard fence, trembling like a trapped ghost. But it was the new additions that froze Clara's blood. Crude symbols chalked on every doorstep. Bundles of sage and wolfsbane tied above doors with twine that glistened unnaturally. And everywhere, the sharp reek of iron. Should have stayed with the Flatlanders, Jed muttered. He turned, and Clara saw what his left hand had been hiding 3 fingers fused together into a twisted club. The skin mottled purple and studded with what looked like thorns. We're doing the best we can. The dream began that night. Clara stood in Widow's Hollow. The quarry's jagged maw yawning cold at her back. Moonlight bled through, clouds the color of a fresh bruise. Before her stretched the pines, their trunks unnaturally straight, planted in perfect rows by long dead hands. Something moved among them, not walked, pulsed. You broke the chain. whispered a voice made of wasp wings and creaking branches. Clara woke, choking on the taste of loam. Her father's rasping breaths echoed down the hall. Each inhalation, a death rattle held too long. The medallion, she'd taken it off to shower, lay on the nightstand. In the moonlight, the crude etching of interlocking thorns seemed to shift, forming words in a language that clawed at her temples. Thorn and root and hungry earth binds the sleeper 'neath the hearth. By dawn, the first blight appeared. Clara found it while fetching water from the well, a circle of dead grass, exactly 7 paces wide behind the tool shed. The soil inside black and glistening like a tar pit when she prodded it with a shovel. The ground swallowed the metal head hole. Her scream brought Mrs. Hale from the neighboring farm, the old woman's legs dragging twin furrows through the dirt. Your Nana told you stories, didn't she? Mrs. Hale's knobby fingers worried at her apron pockets, where something writhed against the fabric, about the things that lived here before the first settlers, before the Indians, even. Clara remembered bedtime tales of the thorned king who slept beneath the hills. His dreams sprouting poisonous brambles through the soil, of the first Blackfield settlers finding the valley empty, save for 6 standing stones arranged in a perfect hexagon, their surfaces carved with spirals that made children vomit if stared at too long. Most of all, she remembered the warning, never leave the chain unbroken. The medallion, Clara whispered. Mrs. Hale's eyes widened. You've not been wearing. A howl cut through the morning, raw and jagged and wrong, like steel dragged across open nerves. Both women turned toward the woods. The pines stood impossibly still, not a single needle trembling in the breeze. Mrs. Hale crossed herself with a hand, missing its pinky. They're coming earlier this year. The funeral procession looked more like a military caravan. Father O'Connell led the way, clutching a censer that smoked thick yellow. His robes stained with substances Clara didn't want to identify. Behind him shuffled the pallbearers, each man's exposed skin wrapped in bandages that wept dark stains. The townsfolk followed in 2s and 3s, eyes darting to the tree line where shadows pooled too thickly. Clara walked alone, the medallion's chain sawing into her neck. No one would meet her gaze. They buried her father in the old plot beside her mother. As the first shovelful of dirt hit the pine bogs, Clara felt it, a vibration through the soles of her boots, deep and resonant as a church bell tolling underwater. Around her, the crowd murmured prayers in unison. their voices rising to drown out the wet, crunching sound coming from the woods. It's not safe to be out after dark, Mrs. Hale warned as twilight bruised the sky. Clara noted how the old woman's porch lights all burned red, casting the farmyard in bloody hues. Especially for you. Why especially me? Mrs. Hale's throat worked soundlessly. From her pocket came a high-pitched chittering. Your family. You're the last of the Byans. The chain. The scream tore through the valley then, curdling the air. Human, but only just. Clara was running before she realized it. Nana's medallion bouncing against her sternum. The screams guiding her to the edge of Widow's Hollow. What she found there stopped her breath. Jed Harper knelt in the center of a stone circle. The same symbols from town carved into his bare chest. His remaining fingers clawed at the ground as thick black roots erupted from his eye sockets. His mouth blooming into a grotesque flower of flesh and splintered bone. Worst of all was the sound a wet, eager slurping as the earth itself consumed him. Father O'Connell emerged from the trees, a rusted sickle in hand. Should have stayed gone, Clara Byan. Blood dripped from his sleeves. Now you'll have to take your mother's place. They came for her at the witching hour. Clara watched from the attic window as shapes shambled up the drive townsfolk she'd known since childhood, their bodies distorted by bulbous growths and weeping fissures. Mr. Peterson from the feed store had mushrooms bursting through his cheeks. Little Leela Carmichael dragged a leg that ended in root clusters, and leading them all, Father O'Connell with his stole, made of braided human hair, chanting words that made the house's foundations shiver. Thorn and root and hungry earth, take this flesh to prove our worth. The floorboards erupted. Clara fell through splintered wood into the root cellar, where something waited in the dark, something that smelled of turned soil and opened graves. Cold tendrils wrapped around her ankles. The medallion blazed white-hot against her skin as she was dragged toward the ancient stone wall at the cellar's rear, now cracked open to reveal a staircase spiraling down into impossible depths. She understood then the warnings, the rituals, the missing children every 7 years, not sacrifices to appease the thing below, but replacements, a new route to sustain the chain. Her mother had been the last. They'd intended Clara to be the next. The roots pulled her deeper. The air thickened with spores that showed the truth in flashes, vast caverns pulsing with bioluminescent rot, human faces screaming silently from wooden growths. And at the center of it all, the mass of writhing tendrils and thorns that had once been called the Thorned King. Its voice crawled inside her skull, showing visions of the valley's future. Houses swallowed by vengeful earth, townsfolk bursting into flowering horrors, and deep below, the great roots spreading outward to infect the world. Clara's fingers found the medallion. Nana's voice echoed through decades, forged from the first 6 stones. Only a Bayan can wield it. With the last of her strength, she drove the sharpened edge into the pulsing heartroot below her. The scream shook mountains. They found her at dawn, half buried in the quarry scree. The townsfolk approached warily, tools in hand, but stopped when they saw what she cradled, a bundle of thorns wrapped in faded cloth. Weeping black sap, Father O'Connell made the sign of the cross with trembling, bark-covered hands. "You killed it," he breathed. Clara looked up. 7 days had passed, though she remembered none of them. The medallion hung heavy around her neck, its surface now etched with strange new sigils. In the distance, the pines swayed despite the windless air. "No," she said, tasting soil on her tongue. "I woke it up." The first child went missing that night. Clara watched from her mother's rocking chair as search parties combed the woods, their torches flickering like fall stars. She didn't join them, didn't need to. The dreams had already shown her where to find little Tommy Carmichael down in the new growth beneath the quarry. His mouth frozen in a silent scream as delicate white roots blossomed from his tear ducts. Out back, the blight spread faster now. The dead patch had grown to 20 paces wide, its center sinking into a funnel of whispering darkness. Clara placed her palm against the cold soil and felt the distant pulse of something vast moving through the deep places. The medallion's thorns pricked her skin, feeding the hungry earth a single drop of Bayan blood. Soon the root sighed. In town, the church bells began to ring. Story 2. The trees swallowed the road an hour outside Hollow's End. Clara Voss rolled down her window, expecting pine and damp earth. Instead, the air carried the tang of wet iron, like a butcher's sink after a busy day. Her mother's funeral roses lay wilting on the passenger seat, petals leaving bloodstains on the upholstery. Should have stayed gone. The gas station attendant had muttered when she'd stopped to ask directions. His name tag read Bud, but his eyes held the flat shine of a creature that had forgotten its human name long ago. The town hadn't changed. Not really. The same peeling clapboard houses, hunched under October skies, their windowsills sprouting dead marigolds in plastic pots. Children's laughter echoed from empty playgrounds. Clara's migraine pulsed in time with her turn signal. As she passed the elementary school where her mother had taught 3rd grade for 30 years, the building's brick face was pockmarked with dark ivy scars, its gutters dangling like torn fingernails. She found Illy Whittaker waiting on the porch of her childhood home, his deputy's badge polished to a sacrificial gleam. They'd played hide-and-seek in these woods once, their small hands sticky with stolen maple candies. Now his smile stretched too wide, showing teeth filed to delicate points. Clarabelle, he held out a rusted key. Heard about your mama. Real shame. The house exhaled rot when she opened the door, not the expected decay of an elderly woman's solitary death, but the thick, sweet stench of meat left in a sealed jar. Photographs lined the hallway, class portraits from her mother's teaching years. Every child's face had been meticulously scratched away. Found her in the root cellar, Illy said, lingering in the doorway. His shadow didn't quite match his movements, screaming about hollow ones. You know how old folks get. Clara's fingers brushed a framed needle point above the fireplace. Bless this mess, it proclaimed in cheerful crimson thread. The O in bless had been picked apart, the remaining fibers forming a crude eye. That night the woods sang, not the familiar chorus of crickets and rustling leaves, but a wet, glottal harmony that made her teeth ache. Clara lay awake, watching the wallpaper. Swirls of faded yellow roses that seemed to rotate when she blinked. At 3:17 a.m., her mother's cuckoo clock erupted in a frenzy, tiny wooden birds tearing each other apart, until the mechanism choked on feathers. The missing girl's poster appeared overnight. 9-year-old Leela Macready smiled from every lamppost, her braces glinting under streetlights that buzzed like angry flies. Clara recognized the family name from her mother's class photos. 3 generations of Macready children with their telltale cowlicks and wide-set eyes. Don't go asking questions, Illy warned when she brought him coffee at the sheriff's office. His fingers left oily prints on the styrofoam cup. Folks here got their own ways, but Clara found the first bone charm 3 days later, while clearing out her mother's sewing box. It nestled between spools of black thread, a tiny molar wrapped in barbed wire, suspended from a leather cord, gone sticky with age. The tooth fit perfectly in the groove behind her own molars when she pressed it there, tasting blood and burnt honey. The woods breathed louder each night. On the 7th day, Leela McCready kneeling in the elementary school's overgrown baseball field. Her pink sneakers gleamed unnaturally bright against the frost-bleached grass. Sheriff Hayes called it animal attack. Convenient. How the bears left her Sunday dress pristine, while reducing everything above the collarbone to red pulp. Clara saw the truth when the wind shifted. Leela's clenched jaw bulged unnaturally, tiny bones pressing against her cheeks like fingers trapped in a glove. The coroner's tweezers extracted 13 teeth not her own, each drilled through the root and strung on human hair. Hollow's End tradition, the sheriff said, lighting a cigarette with hands that had too many knuckles. Keeps the hungry ones quiet. Her mother's journal surfaced in the attic crawl space, wedged between insulation that squirmed like maggots. The pages smelled of laudanum and spoiled milk. The children must be willing. An entry from 1992 read, "The hollow ones can't take what isn't offered. Not completely. Not forever." Clara's migraines worsened. Mirrors showed fleeting movements, small shapes darting behind her reflection's shoulders. She began finding teeth everywhere. Molar fragments in her morning coffee, incisors lining her shower drain, a full set of baby teeth under her pillow, arranged in a grinning semicircle. The final page of the journal contained a map drawn in what Clara prayed was berry juice. The trail led to Blackbriar Hollow, where the pines grew so close their branches wove a cradle of shadows. She brought her mother's bone charm, its barbed wire now warm and pulse-soft against her throat. The trees whispered as she walked, not in words, but in sensations. The ache of a broken wrist from a childhood fall, the metallic tang of her first kiss behind the middle school, the suffocating pressure of her mother's final hug that had lasted just a heartbeat too long. The grove opened like a wound. Dozens of bone charms hung from the branches, clicking in a wind that didn't touch the ground. Below them lay concentric circles of small graves, each marked with a cairn of river stones. Clara recognized the names from her mother's class photos. Emily Sears, Jacob Mulligan, Tommy McCready. Fresh earth mounded around a central pit, where Leela's remaining bones gleamed like ivory piano keys. The hollow ones showed themselves then, not in form, but in the way the light bent around their hunger. Clara felt their attention, like cold tongues licking the space between her vertebrae. The bone charm burned, and suddenly she remembered her mother's trembling hands braiding something sharp into her hair each morning, the way playmates would stare at her too long before turning away. faces slack. The summer she'd sleepwalked to this very grove at age 8, waking with her mouth full of soil, and someone else's screams echoing through the trees. You were always the strongest. Her mother's journal had said. Clara hadn't understood the last entry until now. Until the hollow ones pressed their eyeless faces against the world's membrane and showed her the truth in bleeding fragments. Every 50 years, the hollow ones demanded a bridge, a child steeped in generations of carefully cultivated fear, their bones carved with invitations. Leela Macready had simply been the final seasoning, the dash of terror to whet an ancient appetite. Clara's hands moved without consent. They plucked the barbed wire charm from her neck and pressed it deep into the loam, where the soil parted like a lover's lips. The ground shuddered. Something cold and vast uncoiled beneath her feet. She ran as the trees began to bleed, ran past graves disgorging tiny skeletal hands that grasped at her ankles, ran until her lungs screamed, and the bone charm's absence left a sucking void between her ribs. The sheriff's cruiser idled at the wood's edge, its headlights cutting through the downpour. "Took you long enough," Illy said. His eyes reflected nothing but the storm. "They've been waiting." In her rearview mirror, Hollow's End shimmered like a mirage. Clara tried not to notice the new charm nestling against her heartbeat. A tiny wisdom tooth wrapped in familiar auburn hair. She told herself the whispering from the glove compartment was just the wind, that the children's faces peering from rain-smeared windows were tricks of exhaustion. But when the cuckoo clock strikes 3:17 a.m., she opens her mouth wide. The teeth emerging from her gums are sharp as splintered bone. And in the woods behind her crumbling house, fresh earth begins to shift. Story 3. The moths came first. Emma spotted the pale wings clinging to her windshield as she crossed the town line. Their powdery bodies smeared across glass like fingerprints. They clustered thicker as she navigated the crumbling highway into Hollow's End. Fluttering against her headlights, in such numbers, the road ahead became a storm of spiraling shadows. When she pulled up to the old clapboard house, her house now, the lawyer's letter had said, a dozen more moths lay dead on the porch, their delicate antennae still twitching. "It's the lights," said Sheriff Dawes when she called, his voice crackling through the ancient landline. Moths always swarm the emergency lights after dark. Town ordinance says we keep him off past 9. A beat of static. "You shouldn't be out anyway, Miss Voss. Not with the blackouts." The first night, Emma dreamed of her sister. 7-year-old Leela sat cross-legged on the nursery floor, crayons scattering as she hummed that tuneless song she'd made up the summer before she vanished. Hush the bones, hush the stones. The shadow eats what the light has thrown in the dream. Emma stood frozen at the threshold, watching Leela's drawing hand move faster and faster, crimson wax smeared across construction paper, a stick figure with too many joints, a smiling sun whose rays ended in hooked talons. "It's not a sun," Leela said without looking up. Her voice had the underwater quality of all dream children. "It's a hole, and the hole is hungry." Emma woke, choking on the stench of rotting lilies. The wallpaper in Leela's old bedroom peeled away in damp curls, revealing patches of mold that squirmed faintly in the moonlight. Emma told herself it was the wind making the blackened tendrils quiver, the same wind that whistled through the cracks in the foundation, carrying whispers that coalesced into almost words. She spent the next morning scrubbing the walls raw, but the stains seeped back by noon, darker and wetter than before. At the gas station, the clerk refused to meet her eyes. "You're the Voss girl," he muttered, ringing up her bottled water and batteries. His name tag read Marty. A faded tattoo of a moth adorned his wrinkled forearm. Heard they finally tore down the old schoolhouse. Probably stirred up all kinds of things. What things? Marty's gaze flicked to the security cameras, blinking red light. He shoved her change across the counter. "You leave before sundown," he said, too low for the microphone. "They always come for the family first." The road to the abandoned schoolhouse wound through skeletal birch trees, their branches clawing at Emma's rental car. She parked where the asphalt dissolved into weeds, the ruins jutting from the hillside like broken teeth. The police had searched here after Leela disappeared, had found her favorite hair ribbons snagged on a rusted swing set. Now, 20 years later, Emma's boots crunched over shards of beer bottles, and something whiter, sharper. Inside the collapsed gymnasium, graffiti-covered walls bore the same symbol again and again. A moth with a human skull fused to its thorax. Emma's flashlight beam trembled over a massive mural depicting stick figures with distended bellies dancing around a black sun. Their mouths were bloody holes. A wet crunch echoed from the stage. Emma swung the light toward the sound, catching the glint of eyes low to the ground. A mangy dog worried at a deer carcass, its muzzle slick and red. Relief died in her throat as the beast turned. Its face was too flat, too smooth, the eyes lidless, and glowing faintly amber, the creature emitted a gurgling whine, jaws unhinging to reveal rows of needle-like teeth. She ran. Twilight found her at Hollow's End Historical Society, where a silver-haired librarian slid a dust-caked yearbook across the table. Class of '98, Mrs. Peabody said, tapping a group photo. All 7 honor students died in the school fire. Nasty business. Emma's fingernail dug into the page. There, beside Leela's 3rd grade portrait, someone had inked a moth sigil. My sister wasn't. They never are. The librarian's glasses caught the flickering fluorescence. Every 7 years, a child vanishes. Every 7 years, the blackouts get worse. You'll hear them tonight, the moth-born, scratching at the walls. They're drawn to electric light, you see, to the warmth. The shadows moved first. Emma watched from the kitchen window as the streetlights died block by block. Darkness rolling through Hollow's End like a tidal wave. Her generator hummed to life, safety. The realtor had insisted, flooding the yard with halogen glare. Something scraped against the porch steps. It wasn't until the first moth landed on the window that she noticed the aberration. Where its wings should have been symmetrical, the right side trailed into a shriveled human ear. Another moth pressed against the glass. Compound eyes, glinting with faint intelligence. Its proboscis curled and uncurled like a finger beckoning. Thump. The attic. Emma gripped her father's old hunting rifle. The stairs groaning as she ascended. The smell hit her first. Sweet decay. Like overripe fruit left in a sealed jar. Her flashlight beam illuminated the trunk Leela had hidden in during games of hide-and-seek. Its lid streaked with grimy handprints. Inside, she found the bones. Small, delicate, ribcage scored with parallel gouges. Nestled among the remains lay a stack of crayon drawings sealed in Ziploc bags. Leela's telltale stick figures. But these showed a tall woman with Emma's curls, leading a line of children into a dark forest. In the final panel, the woman's mouth stretched into a grin full of moth antennae, her arms becoming wings that blotted out the sun. The floorboards creaked behind her. You shouldn't have come back, Sheriff Dawes said. His flashlight illuminated 7 figures crowding the attic door. Marty the gas clerk, Mrs. Peabody, faces she'd passed on the street. Their eyes reflected the light in faceted glimmers. The Moth Queen needs a new host every 21 years. 3 cycles of 7. Dawes's jaw unhinged with a wet pop. A proboscis lashing out to wrap around Emma's wrist. She screamed. swinging the rifle butt into his temple. Flesh gave way like rotten wood, releasing a swarm of moths that poured from the wound. She stumbled into the night, generators failing as the entire town went dark. Shapes flitted through the trees, too large for birds, too silent for bats. The forest swallowed her, brambles tearing at her clothes as she plunged toward the ruined schoolhouse. The clearing pulsed with bioluminescent fungus. Before the crumbling stage stood 7 stones arranged in a crescent, their surfaces carved with moth sigils. Beneath the largest stone protruded a small skeletal hand, wearing a friendship bracelet Emma recognized. Pink and purple threads, woven tight to survive decades in the earth. Wings rustled above her. They descended from the canopy like falling leaves. Their human faces stretched across moth bodies. Children's faces, Leela's face, mouth splitting open to release a cloud of spores that burned going down. Emma's knees buckled as the memories flooded in, her hands leading Leela into the woods, her voice chanting the old verses, her hunger as the first wings sprouted from her back. The moth-born swarmed her, not to attack, but to worship. When the sun rose, Emma stood before the stone circle brushing antennae from her new wings. The town's lights flickered back on one by one. Soon another car would come down the old highway, carrying some grieving relative drawn home by lies scribbled on legal documents. In the schoolhouse ruins, fresh crayon drawings waited. Hush the bones, hush the stones. The Shadow Queen eats what the light has thrown. Story 4. The trees swallowed the road an hour ago. Now there's only the crunch of gravel beneath tires, and the weight of pines pressing closer with each mile. Clara grips the steering wheel until her knuckles bleach white. The map's dashed red line to Silver Hollow burning behind her eyelids. She shouldn't be coming back. Not after 20 years. Not after what happened to Leela. Her daughter's laughter echoes through the car's stale air. Clara slams the brakes so hard the seatbelt bruises her collarbone. The forest exhales damp decay through open windows. No giggles, just crows arguing in the canopy, and the tick-tick of cooling metal. She checks the back seat for the 7th time since leaving the interstate. Empty, save for Leela's faded pink backpack, still buckled in like a ghost. You're tired, she tells the rearview mirror. Just tired. The road kinks sharply left. Clara follows, tires slipping on moss-slick curves, and nearly plows into the welcome sign. Silver Hollow's wrought iron letters bleed, rust down weathered oak. Beneath it, Someone's nailed a fresh board. Pop. 317. The 3 looks painted over 4. Clara's childhood home squats at the end of Hemlock Street. Its wraparound porch sagging like a broken jaw. She parks behind a moving van coated in pollen and dead insects. The driver's seat sits empty, keys dangling from the ignition. A half-drunk Coke sweats on the dashboard. Hello. Her voice doesn't carry. The air feels thick, syrup slow. Anyone here? Wind chimes clatter. Clara spins toward the sound. Her grandmother's porcelain angels dangle from the eaves. Their painted eyes scratched out. Behind them, the attic window glows faint blue. The front door groans when she pushes inside. Dust motes swirl in slanted sunlight, catching on cobwebs that shouldn't have formed since the estate sale. Her sneakers leave prints on hardwood that hasn't creaked this way since she was 8. Since the summer, the power went out for 3 days. And Mom burned old letters in the fireplace, while Dad nailed boards over the cellar. Something thumps upstairs. Clara freezes, hand on the banister. Is someone? A child's sneaker tumbles down the steps. Purple glitter straps. Size small. The exact pair Leela was wearing when Clara's phone rings. The screen reads unknown. She swipes answer with trembling fingers. Leave. The voice grates like stones in a tin can. Before dark. Who is this? What do you? The line dies. When she redials, a recording drones. The number you have reached is not in service. Please check the number and crash from the kitchen. Clara runs toward the sound, slipping on a rug that wasn't there before. Her palms slap cold tile. The fridge door hangs open, its empty shelves gleaming. On the floor, a shattered mason jar, shards glistening with red liquid that smells like copper and turned earth. A shadow detaches from the pantry. Clara scrambles back as it steps into the light. A girl, maybe 12, in a yellow sundress, gone gray with dust. Her left arm hangs withered, fingers curled into a permanent claw. Milky eyes fix on Clara. You shouldn't have come back, Miss Price. The girl's mouth moves a half-second out of sync with her words. They've been waiting. Who are you? How do you know my? The back door slams. When Clara looks back, the girl's gone. Only a single muddy footprint remains, too large for a child. Toes elongated like something that walks barefoot on stones. Dusk stains the sky bruise purple as Clara drags her suitcase upstairs. The second step creaks. The 5th groans. The 12th makes a wet squelch she doesn't remember. Her old bedroom looks untouched, crayon drawings still taped to flowered wallpaper, the closet door slightly ajar. She avoids looking at the twin bed, avoids seeing if the stain on the rug is still shaped like Iowa. The bathroom faucet coughs brown water. Clara splashes her face, counts to 10, and lifts her head. The mirror shows the shower curtain first, swaying when there's no draft. Then the writing appearing in condensation. 7 days. The letters melt as she watches, drips elongating into claw marks. Her phone buzzes with a news alert. Missing girl, 8, last seen near Silver Hollow. The photo shows a gap-toothed blonde in purple sneakers. Leela's sneakers. Clara drops the phone. It slides under the clawfoot tub with a clatter. Okay, she whispers. Okay, you're exhausted. Grief does things. You know this. But when she reaches for her pills, the prescription bottle's empty. She definitely refilled it yesterday. The first scream rips through the house at 3:17 a.m. Clara bolts upright, sheets damp with sweat. It came from the basement. She knows without checking. Everyone in Silver Hollow knows what happens in basements. Her father's old flashlight dies at the top of the stairs. The darkness below breathes, a wet, rhythmic sound. Something scrapes against concrete, metal on stone, stone on bone. Leela. The name slips out. Always does in the bad moments. A giggle floats up, high and bright and all wrong, like a cassette tape warped by heat. Clara takes a step down, then another. The wood creaks. The giggling stops. The basement air clings thick and meaty. The beam of her phone light quivers across tool racks, hung with rusted implements. A deep freezer hums in the corner, its lid propped open with what looks like a femur. Clara's pulse thrums in her ears. She forces herself closer, forces herself to look. Ice crystals glitter. Empty. Just stains that could be juice. Could be anything. The lid slams shut. Clara staggers back, phone slipping from her grasp. The screen cracks. Light strobing across walls covered in symbols. Crude stick figures with too many joints. Spirals that hurt to look at. Words in no language that should exist. The strobe catches movement. Something crawls along the ceiling. Limbs bending backward. Head twisting to keep milky eyes locked on hers. She runs. Up the stairs. Through the kitchen. Out into the yard, where moonlight turns the grass silver. The house looms behind her. Attic window glowing blue. A shadow passes behind the glass. Small. Waving. Clara doesn't sleep. She sits in her car with doors locked, watching the street. At 4:33 am Mrs. Donovan from across the street emerges. The old woman walks stiffly to her mailbox, movements jerky like a marionette. She deposits not letters, but clumps of dark hair tied with ribbon. When she turns, Clara sees the jagged hole where her left eye should be. The remaining one rolls wildly before fixing on the car. Too late, Mrs. Donovan croaks. They've tasted your scent. Morning brings no relief. The diner's neon sign buzzes like an angry wasp. Clara slides into a cracked vinyl booth. Eyes on the help wanted sign, stained with something brown. The waitress has a name tag reading MARCIE, and a smile that shows too many teeth. Coffee. Marcy's pencil hovers over her pad, the tips chewed raw, or something stronger. Just coffee, and maybe the plate glass window rattles. Outside, children skip rope in the town square. Their chant carries through the diner's thin walls. 7 days deep, 7 days creep. Teeth in the walls, bones in the keep. When the hollow man comes to play, you'll be part of us, part of the clay. Clara's mug cracks. Coffee spreads across the table like a bloodstain. Those lyrics, where did they learn that? Marcy moans the spill. Old rhyme. Kids have been singing it since. She rubs her neck. 4 parallel scars disappear under her collar. Since before the mind collapse. The what? The waitress freezes. Behind the counter, the radio crackles to life. Another disappearance reported in the Silver Hollow area. Authorities urge residents to. Marcy slams it off. Coffee's on the house. The library smells of mildew and ammonia. Clara thumbs through newspaper archives. Microfilm trembling under her hands. July 1983. Headlines scream. 48 trapped in Silver Hollow mine disaster. Rescue attempts suspended. Memorial service planned. But the following week's paper shows miners emerging. Grins too wide for men who chewed through corpses to survive. The article quotes Mayor Taggart. Miracle below ground. Photos show families reunited. Except Clara leans closer. The little boy, hugging his mother, has 6 fingers on his left hand. The miner kissing his wife lacks a shadow. Her stomach churns. She flips ahead. October 31, 1983. Entire town votes to disband Halloween. November 12. Local teacher found dead in cellar. Authorities confirm the victim's teeth were removed post-mortem. The lights flicker. Clara's breath fogs. Cold seeps through her shoes. Behind her, books begin to slide off shelves. Thump, thump, thump like bodies hitting concrete. She turns. The aisle stretches impossibly long. Exit sign, a distant red eye. Something crouches in the shadows. Not human, not animal. The thing from the basement. Joints popping as it unfolds. Clara runs. The exit keeps moving. The thing's breath frosts her neck. She crashes through a fire door into blinding sunlight. The parking lot sits empty. Her car's gone. Only a child's sneaker remains. Laces tied in a double, not the way Leela used to. Mayor Taggart finds her there. His suit hangs loose, as if he shed 20 pounds since their meeting yesterday. His cufflink catches the light. An odd symbol that matches the basement graffiti. Trouble sleeping, Miss Price. His smile shows gums receding from 2 white teeth. The old houses settle, play tricks. There's something in my home. In the mine. What came up with those miners? His eye twitches. Now, that's just stories. Why don't I walk you? She backs away. I'm calling the police. His laugh follows her down the street. They are part of the vote. The church bells toll 13 as Clara reaches the cemetery. Moss devours headstones. Dates ending in 1983. She pauses at a fresh grave. Evie Marks, beloved daughter. The epitaph shimmers. When she wipes dew away, the letters rearrange. Feed the hollow. They always come here first. Clara whirls. The girl from her kitchen stands by an oak tree. Sundress fluttering in a wind Clara can't feel. Up close, her withered arm looks chewed. Who are you? Evelyn, but they called me Evie. She points to the disturbed grave. Until last week. You're dead. Nothing dies here. Not really. Evie's milky eyes track something over Clara's shoulder. They'll take you to the pit, make you part of the pact. A cold hand grips Clara's wrist. She yelps, but there's nothing there. Just a bracelet of frost burns. Why me? Evie tilts her head. You've been chosen. Your sorrow's sweet, ripe. She fades as the wind shifts. Last words clinging like cobwebs. 7 days to say goodbye. Clara's reflection lies. The motel bathroom mirror shows her 20 pounds thinner. Hair streaked white. Eyes sunk in bruised hollows. She counts the pill bottles. All empty now. The news plays quietly. Authorities expand search for missing novelist Clara Price. Last seen. She clicks it off. The digital clock reads 3:17 am. Always 3:17 now. Her fingers find the new marks under her sleeve. 7 scratches. 1 for each night. Tonight's burns angry and wet. The walls whisper, not words, never words, just the sound of roots pushing through stone, of something massive shifting below ground. Clara presses her ear to cold concrete. A heartbeat thrums. Then a voice that isn't a voice. Mother. She recoils. The sink gushes black sludge. From the pipes come giggles, and the skitter of claws on metal. Clara stumbles into the night. The streets ripple like muscle. Houses pulse. Roofs peel back to reveal rib cages of rafters. Silver Hollow isn't a town. It's a living thing, and it's hungry. The mine entrance yawns at the forest's heart. Clara's flashlight dies as she approaches. The darkness breathes her name. She steps inside. The walls glisten, not stone, not flesh, something between. The air tastes of static and spoiled milk. Her phone's last charge shows the date. October 17th. She arrived on the 10th. 7 days. The tunnel opens into a cavern. Roots dangle from the ceiling, throbbing with faint light. Below them, a pit gapes. Around its edge stand the townsfolk Marcy misses. Donovan, Mayor Taggart. Their eyes reflect nothing. We voted, Taggart rasps. His jaw unhinges, words slithering out. You're the offering. They advance. Clara backs toward the pit. Her heel dislodges a stone. It falls, and falls, and falls. The giggle rises from the abyss. High, bright, wrong. Leela. A shape crawls up the pit wall. Limbs too long. Hair matted with dirt. Eyes like fractured mirrors. It wears Leela's face the way a hermit crab wears shells. Missed you, Mommy. Clara's heart shatters. She reaches out. The thing that isn't Leela cocks its head. Neck snapping audibly. We can be together. Its mouth stretches beyond human limits. Just jump. The townsfolk chant. The roots descend. Clara steps to the edge. The abyss hums a lullaby she used to sing. It smells of hospital antiseptic and freshly turned earth. I'm sorry, she whispers. I'm so sorry I couldn't. The thing's hand closes hers. Cold, so cold. Together they fall. Mayor Taggart adjusts his tie, watching the pit seal itself. How long? Marcy licks her split lip. The book says 7 years. Good. He turns toward town, where new for sale signs sprout like mushrooms. Plenty of time before the next grieving soul comes home. Story 5. The moth hour. The first time Clara noticed the clock running backward. She told herself it was fatigue. Night shifts at St. Agnes Memorial Hospital had a way of sanding down the edges of reality. Fluorescent lights humming like wasps. The reek of antiseptic clinging to her scrubs long after she'd showered. The ceaseless chorus of monitors beeping their electronic dirges. She'd been working doubles for 3 weeks straight to cover rent on her cramped studio above the old laundromat. And sleep had become a fragmented thing, stolen in 20-minute bursts between shifts. Of course, her eyes would play tricks. But then the moths came. They appeared as smudges in her periphery, fluttering just beyond the reach of the flickering bulb above her kitchen sink. At first, she blamed the building's ancient wiring. The way the lights dimmed whenever the laundromat's dryers rumbled to life. But by the third night, the smudges had solidified into shapes. Papery wings the color of cigarette ash, antennae like frayed wires, bodies plump and quivering. They clung to the corners of her ceiling, their wings shivering in unison, as though whispering secrets when she mustered the courage to swipe at them with a broom. The bristles passed through empty air. "You're hallucinating," she muttered, pressing the heels of her palms into her eye sockets until colors bloomed. Sleep deprivation, stress, that's all. But the cracks in her reality kept spreading. It started with the walls. Clara's studio had always been claustrophobic. Peeling wallpaper, the hue of jaundiced skin. A single window grimy, with decades of exhaust. But now, the room seemed to breathe. The floral pattern on the walls rippled when she wasn't looking, petals curling into teeth. At night, she'd wake to the sound of something scratching behind the plaster, slow and deliberate, like a fingernail tracing the outline of her bed. She took to sleeping with the lights on, but the bulb would inevitably fail, plunging her into a darkness that felt alive, thick and syrupy, pooling in her throat. Then there were the whispers. They came from the air vent above her bed, a susurrus of voices just below comprehension. Men, women, children, all speaking over one another in a language that slithered. She stuffed the vent with towels, but the voices seeped through, coalescing into a single phrase by the fourth night. You let him die. Clara knew exactly who he was. Mr. Donovan had been her patient 2 months prior. A gaunt, liver-spotted man with milky cataracts and a tracheostomy tube that gurgled when he laughed. He'd insisted there was something living in his hospital room. It comes at the moth hour, he'd rasped, skeletal fingers clutching her wrist. When the lights go bad, you'll see it in the corners, nurse. Like smoke, but it hungers. She'd patted his hand, made a note to adjust his antipsychotics. The night he died, Clara had been distracted. Her mother's voicemail played on a loop in her head. The tests came back. Stage 4. And she'd missed the alarm when Mr. Donovan's oxygen levels plummeted. By the time she reached his room, he was seizing, his monitor flatlining as his hands clawed at the thing only he could see, writhing above his bed. She'd never forget his final words, hissed through a mouthful of blood-flecked foam. "It's in you now." The knocking began on a Tuesday. 3 rapid taps. 3:17 a.m. The witching hour stretched thin. Clara lurched upright. Her sweat-damp sheets tangled around her legs. The digital clock on her nightstand blinked 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock. Power outage, maybe. Though the street lamp outside still glowed. Tap, tap, tap. Not the door. The wall. The shared wall. The one bordering the adjacent unit that had been empty since Mrs. Whitlock's stroke. Clara pressed her ear to the plaster. A wet, rhythmic sound echoed through the studs. S-H-H-H-lick. S-H-H-H-lick. Like a tongue dragging across bone. Hello. Her voice trembled. The noise stopped. Something scratched the wall from the other side. Slow and jagged. A nail. A knife. Clara recoiled as plaster dust snowed down, the scratches resolving into letters. N-O-S-L-E-E-P. She fled to the bathroom and vomited. Doctor. Ruiz, at the clinic, prescribed lorazepam. Night terrors, she said, squinting at Clara's blood work. Your cortisol's through the roof. Take a week off. Rest. But rest was impossible. The moths multiplied, clustering around the fridge, the light switch, the shower drain. They left no marks, no dust. But their wings made a sound like pages turning in a forbidden book. Clara stopped eating when she found them pooled in her coffee mug, their bodies forming a perfect spiral. Her phone began ringing at night. No number, no voicemails, just static, and beneath it, a wet, rattling breath when she smashed the phone against the wall. The landline in the building's lobby started up, shrilling through the floorboards, until old Mr. Kumar from 2B unplugged it. You gotta get out of here, he warned her in the stairwell, clutching a sack of lint-speckled quarters. That apartment, the lady before you, Whitlock. She kept saying there was something in the walls. Woke up screaming every night. Then one morning, she didn't wake up at all. He leaned in, his dentures clicking. Coroner said her heart stopped. But I saw the gurney on the way out. Whatever was under that sheet, it wasn't flat. The worst was the mirror. Clara avoided it after the third day, when her reflection began lagging. A half-second delay in the blink of an eye. A smile that lingered after she'd pressed her lips into a line. But on the fifth night, cornered by the moths swarming the bathroom, she had no choice. Her face was wrong. Not grotesque, not mutated, but uncanny. The asymmetry of her features amplified. One eye a hair too high, her jawline sharper, as though her bones were rearranging beneath the skin. She leaned closer, breath fogging the glass. Her reflection kept leaning. Clara froze. The reflection's nose pressed against the mirror from the other side, fogging the glass where no breath should exist. Its head cocked, bird-like, and its mouth unhinged, widening until the jaw hung slack as a snake's. From the wet darkness of its throat emerged a moth, wings torn and twitching, followed by another and another. A cascade of ashen bodies pouring onto the sink, the floor, her bare feet. She shattered the mirror with her hair dryer. The hospital called while she was ripping up the carpet. Clara, it's Jenna from HR. You've missed 3 shifts. We're worried. They're in the walls, Clara hissed, clawing at the stained subfloor. Her fingers were raw, bloody. I can hear them. They're hungry. A pause. Are you home right now? Clara laughed, high and fraying. They are everywhere. The moths, the whispers Mr. Donovan knew. He tried to warn me. Mr. Donovan died, Clara. You're not making sense. It's in me now. She screamed and immediately clapped a hand over her mouth. The thing in her throat had spoken with a voice not her own. Graveled, ancient. A sound that belonged to something that had never been human. The line went dead. She tried to leave, got as far as the lobby, where the flickering fluorescence revealed them. Shadows that didn't match the light, elongated limbs, too many joints, heads lolling on broken necks. They clustered in the corners, their forms trembling like heat haze. When she blinked, they were closer. The exit door was locked. Let me out. She beat her fists against the glass, screaming until her voice shredded. Behind her, the shadows pooled, spreading across the linoleum like oil. The moths swarmed her then, filling her mouth, her nose, her lungs. She woke up in her bed. No phone, no windows. The walls were padded, stained yellow with age, and the air reeked of iron and rot. A figure stood in the corner, its back to her, shoulders shuddering. Hello, Clara croaked. The figure turned. Mr. Donovan's corpse grinned at her, his eye sockets seething with moths. Told you it comes at the moth hour, he rasped, and opened his mouth. The thing that crawled out was error. Transcript corrupted. The police found Clara's studio empty save for a few artifacts. Claw marks on the walls, deep enough to expose the pipes. A shattered mirror, its shards coated in a substance later identified as dried moth wings, and curled beneath the radiator. A single strand of hair, gray, coarse, matching the DNA of Margaret Whitlock, deceased tenant, whose autopsy photos showed a peculiarity the coroner had omitted from his report. Her esophagus, stomach, and lungs were packed with the remains of Lepidoptera. Wings intact, as though she'd inhaled an entire swarm. Clara was never found, but if you live in the old complex on Elmwood, the one above the laundromat, you might hear it around 3:17 a.m. A wet, scratching sound in the walls. Don't investigate. Don't speak to it. And whatever you do, never look at your reflection in the dark. The moth hour is patient. It's always hungry, and it remembers who fed it last. Story 6. The cicadas fell silent the moment Clara stepped onto the porch. She paused with her hand on the flaking blue doorframe, the July humidity clotting in her throat. Behind her, the moving truck exhaled a metallic sigh as her husband killed the engine. "See," Mark called, hefting a box labeled Kitchen Misk. "Told you the pictures didn't do it justice." Clara forced a smile. The wraparound porch did look charming beneath its blanket of Virginia creeper. The gabled roof sloping like a sleepy eyelid over diamond pane windows, but the ivy veined the clapboards too densely, pulsing faintly as she stared. When she blinked, the leaves lay still. "Mommy." Lily's voice came from the wrong direction. Clara turned to see her daughter, already halfway across the overgrown yard. Pale hair, floating above Queen Anne's lace. The 5-year-old crouched by a moss-crusted stone, poking through the weeds. "Don't wander off, Bug. We haven't checked for her." The word snakes died as Lily held up her discovery, a china doll's head, one blue eye intact, the other a starred socket, dirt clumped in its yellow curls. "She's cold," Lily said. Mark chuckled, adjusting his grip on the box. "Probably been down there since the Civil War. We'll find all sorts of—" A wet crunch interrupted him. They all looked down. The doll's remaining eye now oozed between Lily's fingers like a burst grape. That night, Clara lay awake, listening to the house digest. The floorboards creaked in slow peristalsis, from attic to foundation. She told herself it was just the summer heat making the old timber expand. But when when she pressed her palm to the wall, the plaster felt respiratory, a faint rise, and fall beneath the wallpaper's faded roses. Mark snored on, oblivious, down the hall. Lily's new nightlight cast a buttery glow beneath her door. Clara counted the cracks in the ceiling plaster, 11, like skeletal fingers, until dawn bleached the windows gray. The first letter arrived with the morning mail. No postmark. The envelope addressed in spidered cursive to the woman of the house. Inside, a single line. It's been so long since we had children here. Clara burned it in the sink, watching the edges curl black. When she turned on the faucet, the water ran rust red for exactly 13 seconds. Lily's drawings changed that week. Gone were the purple unicorns and rainbow houses. Now her construction paper crawled with black crayon spirals that made Clara's eyes ache if she stared too long. It's singing, Lily explained at breakfast, carefully aligning her fork tines with a syrup swirl. The lady in the walls. Mark chuckled into his coffee. Old houses got noises, kiddo. Remember the radiator back in Philly? But Clara noticed how his smile didn't reach his eyes, how he'd started checking the locks twice each night. The second letter arrived during the first thunderstorm. Clara found it waiting on the porch swing, dry as bone despite the downpour. This time, 2 sentences. Your daughter has such bright blood. We remember when the ground drank darker reds. Lightning flash through the rain. Clara saw a figure standing by the property's edge where the forest began. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like a wedding veil, crusted with black mold. When the thunder came, the figure was gone. They found the well on the first cool morning in August. Mark nearly tripped into it while mowing. A circular depression hidden under knee-high grass. By the time Clara reached him, he'd already pried up the rotten boards covering the shaft. Should have been filled in decades ago, he said, peering into the darkness. His voice came back changed, stripped of warmth. Smells like wet birthday candles. Clara gripped Lily's shoulders. The child had gone statue still, pupils swallowing her irises. From below came a liquid plink, as of water dripping into water, except Clara suddenly knew with visceral certainty that nothing living could make that sound. That night, the dreams began. Clara stands in the well, not beside it. In it, her bare feet submerged in icy water that somehow doesn't ripple. Above, the full moon floats like a cataract eye. Something brushes her ankle. She looks down. Pale filaments sway beneath the black water. Hair, she thinks. until they curl around her calf with deliberate pressure. More emerge. Dozens, hundreds, feeling their way up her legs with wet intimacy. The water level rises. It's at her waist when she sees the faces, translucent as drowned jellyfish, pressing against the inside of her skin. Children's faces, mouths open in silent screams. Their tiny hands push outward, stretching her flesh into grasping lumps. She wakes choking, her nightgown drenched in well water that evaporates by sunrise. Lily stopped eating, not abruptly, but gradually, as if forgetting meals existed. She'd sit for hours at the kitchen table, drawing spirals within spirals. Her crayons worn down to nubs. When Clara checked the trash, she found lunchbox sandwiches compressed into dents, damp bricks crawling with ants. The pediatrician blamed stress from the move. "Give it time," he said. But in the parking lot, an old nurse pulled Clara aside. Her breath smelled of clove cigarettes. "My granny lived out your way," she whispered. "Said the woods there ain't right. Things that hungered before the first settlers came." She pressed a tarnished St. Benedict medal into Clara's palm. Don't let it taste her fear. That afternoon, Clara found the third letter in Lily's backpack. The handwriting had evolved, sharper, angrier, bleeding through the paper. "You think to deny U.S. We who drank from skulls, when your bloodline was still wriggling in the mud. The child carries the mark. She comes tonight." When the scream came, Clara was already running. Lily's bedroom stank of spoiled milk and turned earth. The night light had burst, leaving glass shards like crystallized honey on the floor. Mark stood frozen in the doorway, face bleached of all but 2 red spots high on his cheeks. The thing by the window turned. It wore Lily's Dora, the explorer pajamas. Its hair was Lily's sun-bleached gold. But the face, oh God, the face rippled, features swimming beneath skin like pond film. When it smiled, Clara saw teeth that had never known braces or baby gaps, needle sharp and countless. "Mommy," it said in Lily's voice, if Lily had learned to speak from graveyard crickets. "I'm hungry." Mark made a wet noise. The thing's head snapped toward him, neck elongating with wet pops. "Don't." Clara surprised herself. "Don't look at him. Don't touch him." The thing's face stabilized for a heartbeat. Lily's button nose, Lily's freckles. And in that moment, Clara lunged. The St. Benedict medal seared her palm as she slapped it onto the thing's forehead. A shriek split the air, not loud, but deep, vibrating in Clara's fillings. The bedroom walls pulsed outward. breathing for one nauseating second before the thing exploded into a swarm of mayflies. They streamed past Clara's face, each insect whispering "Tonight, as they poured through a crack in the baseboard. Mark collapsed. Clara didn't move. On the floor where the thing had stood lay Lily's pajamas, empty, but for a single item. The eyeless doll head from their first day, now grinning with jagged porcelain teeth. The well exhaled. Clara felt it as she approached with the gasoline can, the air thickening until each breath felt like swallowing wet wool. Her phone's flashlight revealed nothing but glistening stone walls plunging into impossible darkness. You won't have her. Clara's voice sounded pitiful against the well's hungry silence. She appended the can. The match fell in a dying comet. Flames roared upward, then inverted, sucked downward with a sound like 1,000 children gasping. The explosion never came. When Clara peered over the edge, the fire was gone. Only darkness remained, and a new smell rising, copper and burnt hair. Hands grabbed her waist. For one delirious moment, Clara thought it was Mark, come to save her, save them all. Then fingernails, like splintered bone, dug into her hips. Mother, hissed a chorus of voices from the well's gullet. You've come to witness. The stones rippled. Clara's scream tangled with the thing's laughter as they fell together into the wet dark. Mark found the note at sunrise. He'd searched all night woods, roads, even the crumbling smokehouse. But only this slipped from Lily's bedsheets when he finally collapsed onto her mattress. We remember you now. We remember your marrow. Come see how she grows. Outside, the cicadas screamed. Clara wakes. The well cradles her in its stagnant womb. Above, the moon never sets. Below, the water never rises. Her legs have become part of the stone, moss threading through her veins. Sometimes the faces come. Colonial bonnets, Depression-era overalls, a 1980s neon scrunchie, all wearing her eyes. They sing to her in Lily's voice. She's learning the words. On Route 622, drivers sometimes notice the old farmhouse's new caretaker, a pale woman who walks the property line at dusk, her feet leaving no prints in the dew. Those who stop never mention the shadow keeping pace behind her, tall and thin and patient. The for sale sign went up last week. The realtor leaves brochures in the mailbox, unaware that someone adds a line each night to the listing description. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, mature landscaping, quiet neighbors, ideal for families. mind the ivy. It does so love to cling. Story 7. The lighthouse stood alone on the jagged teeth of Harper's Point. A sentinel of rusted iron and salt-bleached stone, Clara counted 47 steps up the spiral staircase before her trembling legs forced her to pause. The numbers she'd been muttering dissolving into uneven breaths. The caretaker's manual had warned about the vertigo. New keepers often feel the walls press inward during ascent. But nothing could have prepared her for the way the structure seemed to breathe. She pressed a palm against the curved wall. Cold seeped through her gloves. Or was it warmth? The sensation shifted like mercury. Impossible to pin down. It's just the sea air rotting the insulation, she told the silence, the words devoured by the hollow throat of the tower. Her voice had taken on a frayed, unfamiliar quality. These past 3 weeks, eroded by endless conversations with no one. The previous keeper's journal lay open on the narrow cot when she returned to the watchroom. Clara froze, her wool sweater catching on the doorframe. She'd left it in the supply closet. October 12th, read the entry, the handwriting frantic. The shadows don't match the light. A draft slithered through the room, carrying the stench of low tide, crushed shellfish, and diesel fuel. Clara gripped the edges of the journal, her thumbnail digging into the paper's softened edge. The page ended mid-sentence. If you hear it singing, don't let it. The generator failed at sunset. Clara's breath crystallized in the sudden dark as the beacon's rotation ground to a halt. She fumbled for the emergency lantern, its beam slicing through dust motes that swirled like agitated insects. Through the salt-caked window, the Atlantic churned beneath a moonless sky. Waves clawing at the cliff base 80 feet below. Thump. The sound reverberated through the iron floor grates, not from the sea, from beneath her. Wind, Clara whispered, clutching the lantern's handle until her knuckles crackled. Loose pipe in the boiler room. Thump, thump, thump. Rhythmic now, ascending. She lunged for the radio, static hissing through her plea. Mayday, this is Harper's Point Light. Something's in the tower. The transmitter died with a guttural pop. In the fleeting green afterglow of the control panel, Clara saw the journal lying open to a new page. October 29th. It read in her own handwriting, I shouldn't have come here. Low tide exposed the cave at dawn. Clara stood at the cliff's edge, binoculars trembling, as she studied the jagged mouth in the rock. The sea had vomited up its contents, driftwood snarled in kelp, the shattered hull of a fishing skiff, and nestled among the wreckage, something glinted, metallic, angular. "Don't," whispered the part of her that still flinched at basement shadows. "Wait for the Coast Guard." But the radios had crackled with dead air for 9 days. The supply boat was overdue. Her fingernails, chewed ragged, throbbed in time with the pulse behind her eyes. The descent took 40 minutes, the rope ladder swaying against the cliff face. By the time her boots sank into wet gravel, the cave exhaled a damp, meaty stench that clung to her sinuses. Up close, the metallic object resolved into a nameplate. SS Vestry, 1932, the vanished tender ship from the keeper's journal. Something crunched beneath her heel. Teeth. Dozens spilled from a barnacle-crusted jawbone. Molars worn flat from grinding nothing. Human. Clara stumbled back, her scream tangled in the crash of surf. The skull rolled to face her, orbital sockets clogged with sea wrack. Not possible, she thought, while burning her throat. The vestry disappeared 80 years ago. These bones should be smooth as beach glass, yet the mandible gleamed pearly white, fresh tendons clinging to the hinge. A wet slap echoed from the cave's throat. Clara ran. The rope ladder swayed wildly as she climbed, her palms tearing on frayed hemp. When she collapsed onto solid ground, the horizon tilted nauseously. Through the binoculars, the cave mouth seemed to ripple, not with water, but with movement. Things darker than shadow. Things with too many joints. The storm hit on the 17th night. Clara huddled in the watchroom as waves shook the tower's foundation. Each crash sent vibrations through the iron struts, a discordant chime that made her molars ache. The emergency lantern had died days ago, leaving only the stuttering glow of her last road flare. She'd stopped writing in the journal. It wrote back anyway. November 5th, declared the latest entry, ink glistening like fresh blood. We're almost ready. Stop it, Clara rasped, clawing at the page. Paper tore beneath her nails. But the words remained, seared into the sheets below. Her head throbbed, a constant pressure now, as if something were nesting behind her eyes, picking through memories like trinkets. The flare guttered. In the dying red light, the walls began to move. Not the sea's reflection, not rats. The rivets themselves seemed to writhe, iron sweating black ichor that coalesced into shapes. A handprint here, a face there, mouth stretched wide in silent screams. Clara pressed herself against the cot, her own scream trapped behind clenched teeth. The temperature plummeted. Frost blossomed across the window in intricate patterns, not crystalline, but fibrous, like mycelium. A sound seeped through the glass, through stone, through skin, singing. No melody, only dissonance. A chorus of drowned throats, vibrating in unison. Clara's vision doubled. The watchroom warped. Walls bending inward to form a spiraling tunnel lined with wet stones. At its terminus, something vast shifted in the dark. Come, it crooned with her mother's voice. Come see. She was moving before conscious thought. Boots clanging on the spiral stairs. Down past the generator room. Down into the sublevel sealed with a rusted hatch. The caretaker's manual had warned about sulfuric buildup. Under no circumstances open. The hatch groaned open at her touch. A staircase, older than the lighthouse, hewn from the living rock. The singing swelled, vibrating in her marrow. Clara's nose bled freely now. Crimson droplets glowing in the bioluminescent fungus, coating the walls. The cavern took her breath. Stalactites dripped milky, fluid onto a subterranean beach, littered with wrecks. Viking longships fused with steamships. Aircraft fuselages, studded with coral. And beyond the graveyard, the black water stretched infinite, lapping at a shore strewn with bones in concentric patterns. An altar. Clara's legs carried her forward. The water stirred. They emerged in silence. Pale, elongated things with too many ribs. Their skin glistening like the cave's walls. No eyes, no mouths, only smooth flesh where features should be. And hands, so many hands, branching from distended torsos. The nearest creature cocked its head. A slit opened vertically along its face, peeling back to reveal a hollow, ringed with translucent teeth. It sang. Clara's mind cracked like a porcelain plate. The pressure behind her eyes burst, and suddenly she understood. The lighthouse wasn't a warning. It was a beacon. The Coast Guard found the tower empty. No blood. No signs of struggle. The generator hummed contentedly, its light sweeping over calm seas. In the watchroom, the caretaker's journal lay open to a fresh page. November 12th. Read the entry, penned in precise script. We're home. Outside, the cave waits. Story 8. The walls breathed. Clara pressed her palm flat against the floral wallpaper, once cream-colored, now the hue of nicotine-stained teeth, and felt the slow expansion beneath the peeling vines. A damp warmth radiated through her fingertips, carrying the scent of wet earth and something metallic, she jerked her hand back, leaving 5 faint condensation marks that shimmered briefly before being absorbed into the pattern. 3 weeks since she'd moved into the 3rd floor walk-up above the abandoned tailor shop. 3 weeks since the dreams began. The realtor had called it vintage charm. Clara ran her thumbnail along the seam where wallpaper met ceiling, catching a flake of something black and fibrous. It crumbled like charred skin. The apartment had been listed at half-market value, a fact she'd attributed to the water stains blooming across the ceiling like Rorschach tests. Now she noticed how the stains seemed to shift when viewed from the corners of her eyes. Her brother's silver locket grew heavy around her neck. Michael had given it to her the night before his accident. The chain still warm from being tucked under his sweater. For good luck, he'd said. That lopsided smile not quite reaching his bloodshot eyes. The clasp had jammed shut ever since. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Clara froze. Paintbrush suspended above the half-finished mural of birch trees. She'd been commissioned to create for some CEO's spa retreat. The sound came again. Not the random settling of an old building, but the deliberate compression of wood under weight. Her eyes darted to the peephole. Shadows stretched long across the landing. Though it was 2:17 p.m., according to her phone, the digital numbers pulsed slightly, as though struggling to maintain their shape. Mrs. Wojcik, Clara called, throat tight. The octogenarian in 3B hadn't answered her door in days. Though Clara could sometimes hear the old woman's television playing polished news broadcasts through the wall. Mr. Alvarez. The hallway light flickered through the fisheye lens. Clara watched the shadows coalesce into a human silhouette, too tall, limbs jointed all wrong. Her breath fogged the peephole. When it cleared, the landing stood empty, except for a dark smear on the doormat that hadn't been there before. It looked like motor oil, but when she pressed a paper towel to it, the stain came away rust-red and viscous. That night, the scratching began. Not mice, not pipes. This was the sound of something methodically working at the plaster behind her bedroom wall. Clara lay rigid beneath her grandmother's quilt, sweat cooling on her skin as the scratches formed distinct patterns, long vertical lines, then horizontal, like someone drawing boxes in the dark. The locket burned against her sternum. She'd started sleeping with it outside her pajamas. After waking to find the chain wrapped twice around her throat. At 3:33 a.m., the wall split open. Clara watched through splayed fingers as the floral pattern peeled back like diseased flesh, revealing wet bricks crawling with centipedes. Their antennae twitched in unison, forming shapes that resolved into letters. Your fault. The centipedes scattered as a pale hand emerged from the wall, fingers glistening with some viscous fluid. It grasped at empty air, nails blackened and split. The smell of rotting plums filled the room. When she screamed, the wall sealed itself. Only the scent remained, clinging to her sheets. The super dismissed her complaints. Old buildings got quirks, he said, not meeting her eyes as he scribbled in his maintenance log. Clara noticed his pen left no marks on the paper. You want peace and quiet. Buy a condo. Her mural suffered. The birch trunks twisted into knuckled spines. Leaves bleeding crimson at the edges. The CEO's assistant left increasingly terse voicemails. Clara played them on speakerphone while scrubbing at the bathroom tiles, where black mold kept reappearing in the grout no matter how much bleach she used. The spores formed faint faces. A child's features here, an old man's sunken eyes there, always dissolving when examined directly. Mrs. Wojcik's television stopped playing through the paper-thin wall. Clara heard wet chewing sounds, punctuated by soft whimpers, when she pounded on 3B's door. Something scraped against the other side, long fingernails on wood. The peephole went dark, as though blocked from within. The locket sprang open on the 7th night. Clara stood at her kitchen sink, scrubbing flecks of black mold from under her nails, when the familiar catch released with a click. The heart-shaped pendant fell onto the linoleum, chains slithering after it like a silver snake, her reflection warped in the locket's interior mirror. Eyes too wide, mouth stretched into a rictus grin, where Michael's photo should have been nestled opposite. She found a Polaroid of her own bedroom wall. In the image, the floral pattern peeled back to reveal Michael's face, pressed against the bricks. Mouth open in a silent scream. His remaining eye, the left socket, was an empty hole crawling with beetles. Locked onto hers, she threw the locket into the junk drawer. It reappeared around her neck each morning, chains slightly tighter than before, on the day the ceiling started bleeding. Clara finally found the hidden room. She'd been tracing the water stains with a charcoal pencil, mapping their progression across the living room, when her hand slipped through what appeared to be solid plaster. The wall membrane stretched like rotten fruit skin before bursting with a wet pop. Behind it lay a space the size of a coffin, walls covered in children's handwriting. They watched through the flowers. The mold is hungry. It wasn't an accident. At the back of the niche, wrapped in newsprint, dated October 31, 1987, lay a bundle of human teeth threaded onto fishing line. The headline below screamed local girl. 8 missing. Police suspect family involvement. A photo showed the building's facade, draped in crime scene tape. In the crowd of onlookers, Clara recognized Mrs. Wojcik, looking decades younger, her hand clasped over a smiling mouth. The walls began to weep then, thick, syrupy droplets that crawled upward along the baseboards. Clara stumbled backward, cracking her skull against the doorframe. When she came to, the hidden room had sealed itself. Only a single tooth remained, nestled in her palm like a poisoned pearl. Her phone died that night. All the clocks stopped. The scratching behind the walls evolved into something more purposeful. Nails carving symbols, knives scoring bone. Clara took to sleeping in the bathtub. The locket's chain wrapped 3 times around her fist. She drank cold coffee straight from the pot and ate saltines until her gums bled. The CEO's mural now depicted a forest of grasping hands. The spa's logo warped into a screaming mouth. The mold spread faster. It bloomed across her pillow in Rorschach patterns that shifted when she blinked. One night, it formed Michael's face, his good eye pleading, "You let me drown." The spores whispered in perfect unison. You held the locket instead of my hand. Clara stopped screaming when the walls started screaming back. On the final morning, if it was morning, she found the truth in the medicine cabinet. The mirror showed her reflection, aged decades. Hair white as the centipedes squirming beneath her scalp. Behind her, the bathroom walls pulsed like diseased lungs. The locket's chain had fused with her skin, its heart-shaped pendant beating in time with the building's rhythm. The aspirin bottle rattled as she reached for it. Not pills inside, but teeth, dozens of them, adult and child-sized alike. At the bottom lay a Polaroid of Mrs. Wojcik smiling with bloody gums, the super standing beside her, holding a claw hammer. Behind them, the bathroom wall bulged with half-formed human shapes. The scratching reached a crescendo. Plaster rained down as the walls split open, revealing brickwork veined with black mold. Dozens of pale hands emerged, fingers brushing her cheeks in mock caress. The centipedes poured forth in a clicking wave, forming words on the floor. We kept you safe. We ate the others. Now IT's your turn. Clara laughed then. A wet gurgle that startled the hands into stillness. She pressed her palm against the wall's pulsing surface. It parted like a lover's lips, welcoming her home. The last thing she saw before the bricks closed around her was the mural. Now, perfectly restored to idyllic birch trees, waiting for the next tenant to arrive. Down in the street, a for rent sign flickered. The super whistled as he changed the lockbox code, ignoring the wet, crunching sounds from the walls. In 3B, Mrs. Wojcik smiled her gumless smile and turned up the volume on her polished news program, somewhere behind the floral wallpaper. A new voice joined the chorus of whispers. The locket remained on the bathroom floor, its mirrored interior reflecting nothing at all. Story 9. The ice sang as it died. Dr. Elena Marlowe heard it first through 300 feet of glacial crust. A low-frequency thrum that vibrated in her molars as her team's thermal drill chewed toward the anomaly. The Antarctic morning hung suspended around them, a razor-blue sky stretching seamless from horizon to horizon. Nothing should have been moving under the ice here. Not this deep, not this old. Readings, she asked, breath curling white from the fur-lined hood of her parka. Her astrophysicist, Raj, squinted at the monitor in their makeshift drilling shack. Frost feathered the edges of the screen. Same spherical cavity we mapped yesterday. 112 meters diameter. But the resonance. He tapped a jagged waveform. It's modulating, responding. Elena's gloves creaked as she gripped the drill controls. They'd been sent to extract ice cores, documenting 80,000 years of atmospheric history. Simple, clean, the kind of grant-friendly work that might finally earn her tenure after 2 divorces, and a liver that whispered quit while you're ahead every conference season. Then the ground-penetrating radar had revealed the hollow space, the perfect circle, the faint heat signature. Like it's hollow, Raj said again. Though they'd had this conversation 6 times since the discovery. But not empty. The drill bit punched through. Air screamed up the borehole. A sound that shouldn't exist, couldn't exist, in air colder than liquid nitrogen. Elena's sinuses flooded with the stench of burnt hair and wet pennies. The monitor flared ultraviolet before dying. Raj stumbled back, clutching his face. Lights, Elena barked. Their geologist, Anya, hit the shack's switches. Nothing. The generator's rumble had stopped. Outside, the team's 4 snowmobiles sat dark under the bleeding edge of a solar eclipse none of their satellites had predicted. Battery packs, Anya said. Her Russian accent thickened with adrenaline. All drained. Elena unzipped the shack door. The landscape hit her like a psychic slap. The ice sheet glowed, not the gentle radiance of sunlight through frost, but a deep, vascular crimson pulsing upward from the borehole. It climbed her boots, coated her goggles, turned the world into the wet interior of some enormous organism. 20 meters away, their biologist, gangly, joke-cracking Tom, stood rigid beside his ice core samples. His shadow stretched wrong, not away from the sun, but toward the drill site. Tom. He turned. Alina retched. His face had become a convex surface. Eyes and nostrils inverted like a mask, pressed from inside his skull. His voice emerged syrupy, as though filtered through warm oil. It wants us to see. Then he split, not along bones or sinew, but in planes of geometry that bypassed anatomy entirely. Tom's body unfolded into a shimmering tessellation of meat and light. His scream harmonized with the ice's metallic wail. Alina's knees hit snow as the pieces hovered, vibrating, before collapsing into a steaming mound of offal. The drill shack exploded. Alina woke to darkness and the smell of kerosene. Anya's face floated above her, lit by a trembling hurricane lamp. The Russian's left cheek bore a fresh burn, blisters forming a spiral pattern. Concussion, Anya said. Don't sit up. Raj. Gone. Walked into crevasse when the light came. Anya's gaze darted to the shack's sole remaining window. Boards nailed across it throbbed with faint red light. We need to seal borehole. Alina's head swam. Tom. Is fertilizer. Move. They emerged into nightmare. The sky had curdled. Stars smeared across the dome of night, like thumbprints on film. The aurora australis churned overhead in colors Alina's eyes refused to process. Hues that bypassed rods and cones to stab directly into the optic nerve. The ice beneath their boots resonated with that same subsonic thrum, now threaded with something darker, hungrier. The drill rig leaned drunkenly over the borehole. Its steel bones warped into Fibonacci spirals. The crimson glow pulsed stronger now, illuminating tendrils of not smoke, not light, fragments of an unseen whole coiling up from the depths. Alina's fillings buzzed. We need explosives, Anya said. We're geologists, not. Storage locker 3. Seismic charges for ice fracturing. Alina's stomach lurched as they passed Tom's remains. His frozen blood formed a perfect cock snowflake. each iteration smaller and more intricate. She forced herself not to count the repetitions. The storage lockers had fared better than the living quarters. Anya tore through boxes of blasting caps, and C4 with practiced efficiency. Alina stared at the borehole. The tendrils were coalescing, taking shape. A silhouette with too many joints. A crown of spirals. Eyes that weren't eyes. "It's not a structure down there," she whispered. Anya froze. What? The cavity. The heat signature. We thought it was a building or a ship, but... Alina pressed a hand to her throbbing temple. It's breathing. They armed the charges in silence. The thing by the borehole didn't move, didn't need to. Alina's every step felt preordained, as though the ice were a film reel, and she a flickering image on its surface. When they'd placed the last brick of C4, Anya handed her the detonator. On 3, the tendrils surged. Anya vanished in a lattice of crimson light. Her body folded, refracted, became 100 Anyas screaming in unison, before collapsing into a cloud of red mist. The detonator slipped from Alina's grip. The thing spoke, not in sound, but in the sudden absence of it, a vacuum of meaning that collapsed her thoughts into a single terrible truth. You are not the first. Memories, not her own, flooded Alina's mind. She saw civilizations buried deeper than fossils. Cities of coiled stone built by things with too many legs. Rituals conducted in the crushing black of oceanic trenches. 1,000 species clawing their way to sentience, only to break against the rocks of revelation. We were here before your sun kindled. We will remain after IT gutters. The detonator glowed at her feet. Alina lunged. The explosion tore the world to static. When coherence returned, she lay at the bottom of a new crater. The borehole was sealed under 100 tons of fractured ice. The sky had resumed its mundane blackness, though the stars still looked oily. Alina's right hand was gone, not severed, unmade. The stump showed no bone or blood, only a smooth plane of flesh, as though her anatomy had never included fingers. She stumbled toward camp, toward radios, toward rescue. The tents were gone. In their place stood a monument of ice, a perfect facsimile of the drill rig rendered in frozen blood. Its spiral legs framed a message carved in negative space, each letter a window into howling cosmic night. We are the SHARDD-1. You have postponed nothing. We see you in the between. Alina burned the camp's remaining fuel. She walked 63 miles to the coast. the rescue helicopter's crew found her gnawing raw penguin flesh, all 4 limbs intact, babbling about cities inside the mantle. They diagnosed hypothermia, psychosis, the phantom pain in her miraculously regrown hand was dismissed as nerve damage. But Alina knew. She'd tasted the dark between galaxies, learned the true shape of time, not a river, but a mycelial network rotting from the inside. Every night, she checks the corners of her Cambridge apartment for spirals, avoids mirrors, the thing that took Tom and Anya, and Raj left something in her marrow, a gift. It called the infection, a receipt. Humanity had always feared extinction by asteroid or plague or war. The truth is colder. We are not victims of the cosmos. We are not even a footnote. We are the mold on a tombstone, the mites on a carcass, blind and gorging. As the universe breathes slowly toward revelations that will erase us between heartbeats. Alina writes this in a journal she'll burn each dawn. The sharded one whispers through her dreams now. It thanks her. The explosion didn't seal its prison. It chipped the lock. They're coming. They're already here. Look at your hands. Count your fingers. Now count again. Story 10. The cracks in the ceiling had always been there. That's what Clara told herself when she first noticed them snaking across the plaster above her daughter's bed thin. Jagged lines like capillaries in a corpse's eye. They were just part of the old house's charm, she reasoned. The same charm that had made the realtor use words like rustic and full of character, while showing them rooms where the floorboards groaned like wounded animals beneath their feet. Lily's imaginary friend appeared the week they moved in. Her name is K.H. Liare. The 7-year-old announced over oatmeal one morning, mangling the guttural syllables with her milk teeth. She lives in the walls. Clara smiled through the ache of unpacked boxes, still littering the kitchen. That's nice, sweetheart. What does she look like? Lily's spoon clinked against the bowl. She's made of moth wings and candle smoke. But only when she wants to be seen. The first true manifestation came during the autumn equinox. Clara woke to the sound of papery rustling, the kind made by dried leaves skittering across pavement. Only these noises came from inside the walls. She pressed her ear to the floral wallpaper gone sepia with age, and heard something breathing in the plaster's slow, wet inhalations that left trails of black mold blooming between the cracks. By Thanksgiving, the house developed a taste for light. Bulbs burned out hourly, their filaments reduced to glowing red worms in the glass tombs. Flashlight beams dissolved into murky twilight after 10 seconds. Candles guttered and died despite closed windows. Clara took to carrying a camping lantern everywhere. Its cold let glare carving islands of safety in the thickening dark. Lily's drawings changed. Where once there had been rainbows and smiling suns, her crayons now etched spiraling patterns that hurt to look at fractal geometries that squirmed under direct observation. The stick figure family portraits gained extra limbs, their mouths stretched into vertical gashes. When Clara asked about the new art style, Lily tilted her head at a disturbingly acute angle. K.H. Liare says, "We're going to play forever," she said. In the place behind the angles, the old journal surfaced during Christmas renovations. Clara found it bricked up behind the fireplace, its leather binding cold as a fresh corpse. The pages crackled with Victorian script, chronicling the original owner's descent into madness. Entries spoke of the dweller between angles and that which hungers in the 7th dimension. The final page contained a child's handprint in iron-brown stains, surrounded by mathematical symbols that slid off the paper when examined directly. New Year's Eve brought the thaw. Clara woke to dripping sounds, though the thermometer read -10 F. She followed the noise to Lily's room and found the walls weeping beads of tarry liquid that smelled of turned earth and spoiled honey. The cracks had widened overnight, revealing glimpses of something glistening and pulsating within the house's bones. When she touched the ooze, it clung to her fingers like sentient molasses, whispering in a language that carved hieroglyphs of dread into her medulla oblongata. Lily stopped eating in January. "I'm full," she'd say, pushing away plates while her collarbones jutted like porcelain wings. Her eyes developed a nacreous film that caught the light wrong. Sometimes Clara caught her standing motionless in corners, facing the junction where walls met at non-right angles, whispering strings of numbers that didn't quite align with base 10 mathematics. The geometry riots began in February. Clara walked into the living room to find the coffee table legs bent at 100-degree angles. Door frames leaned inward, creating impossible perspectives that made her retch. The grandfather clock's pendulum now swung in a lazy lemniscate pattern, its hands melting into spirals whenever she blinked. She tried to take Lily and leave, but the roads had developed non-Euclidean curves that always led back to the house. On the vernal equinox, the walls dissolved. Clara woke to Lily's cold hand on her cheek. child's pupils had become perfect hexagons. She wants to meet you properly, Lily said as the bedroom walls flowed like wax, revealing infinite corridors of iridescent stone arranged in angles that liquefied the sanity. Something vast and pulsing shifted in the fractal distance, its true form hidden behind layer upon layer of reality, like nesting dolls made of pure geometry. The last entry in Clara's phone reads, "It's not a house. It's a chrysalis. We're the larvae. They're coming through the angles. Can't unsee the edges where the world folds." Lily opened a door that was always there. I hear her laughing in the walls. The cracks taste like birthday cake and funeral flowers. Need to find the right angle to cut through, but all the knives bend. When the surveyors came in spring, they found an abandoned farmhouse in perfect condition. No cracks marred its freshly painted walls. The previous tenants' belongings lay undisturbed. Coffee cups still half full with liquid that evaporated when exposed to air. In the attic, they discovered a large cocoon woven from spider silk and human hair, vibrating gently as if something inside were dreaming. Down in town, the bartender mentions a haggard woman who comes in every equinox, muttering about angles and trying to fold beer coasters into impossible shapes. She leaves before last call, following a small figure. Only she can see into the woods where the shadows make shapes that trouble the eyes. The regulars don't ask questions. Some things once known can't be unknown, like the way certain trees seem to shift position when you're not looking, or how the setting sun sometimes casts light that leaves no shadows. In the abandoned house, new cracks begin to form.